The bright screens of Earth's deep space monitoring station lit up the otherwise dark room. It was just another quiet night shift for Robert, who sat at his desk sipping his third cup of coffee. The year was 2157, and humanity had grown comfortable with their role as a spacefaring civilization. The soft hum of computers filled the room as data from countless sensors flowed across his screens. Robert reached for his coffee mug, but his hand froze midway. Something on the main display caught his eye. An unusual energy reading coming from near the Kuiper belt. "That's strange," he muttered, adjusting his glasses. The reading was unlike anything he'd seen before. It wasn't a comet or an asteroid. The energy signature was too complex, too artificial. Within minutes, Robert had confirmed the reading with 3 different sensor arrays. His hand shook slightly as he reached for the emergency communication line to the Earth Defense Fleet headquarters. "This is Deep Space Monitoring Station 7, he said, trying to keep his voice steady. "Request immediate contact with command. Priority level Alpha." The response was quick. Soon, Captain Tom Richards of the EDF Pathfinder was being briefed in the fleet's main conference room. He stood tall, his weathered face illuminated by the holographic display showing the mysterious readings. "The energy signature suggests multiple large objects," the fleet's science officer explained, pointing to the data streams, "but they're completely cold, almost no heat signature. If I didn't know better, I'd say we're looking at powered-down ships." Captain Richards studied the information carefully. "How many objects are we talking about?" "Initial estimates suggest around 300 separate masses, sir, all clustered together." The room fell silent. 300 objects, each large enough to be a spacecraft, sitting at the edge of their solar system. It could be a threat, or it could be something else entirely. Either way, they needed to know. "Prep the Pathfinder for immediate launch," Richards ordered. "We need eyes on this situation." The next 12 hours were a flurry of activity. The Pathfinder, humanity's most advanced deep space vessel, was quickly prepared for its mission. Its crew of 50 was assembled, each chosen for their expertise and experience. As the ship broke away from Earth's orbit, Captain Richards stood on the bridge, watching the blue marble of their home world shrink behind them. The Pathfinder's engines hummed with power, pushing them toward their mysterious destination, at speeds that would have seemed impossible just a few decades ago. "Time to target?" Richards asked. 4 hours at current speed, sir," the navigator replied. "The objects haven't moved since first detection." The journey was tense. Every crew member knew they could be heading toward humanity's first major space conflict, or perhaps the greatest discovery in human history. They prepared for both possibilities. As they approached the coordinates, the ship's sensors began picking up more detailed readings. The science officer's eyes widened as she analyzed the data. "Captain," she called out, "you need to see this." The main screen filled with images that made everyone on the bridge catch their breath. Floating silently in the void were hundreds of massive ships, each one easily dwarfing the largest vessel humanity had ever built. They were elegant in design, with smooth curved hulls that seemed to flow like liquid metal. But they were dark, showing no signs of power or life. "Life signs?" the captain asked. The science officer worked her controls frantically. "Sir, the ships are full of them. Millions of life signs, but they're in some sort of suspended animation. These ships, they're not dead, they're sleeping." Captain Richards stepped closer to the viewing window, staring at the massive fleet before them. "Send word back to Earth. Tell them we found something unprecedented. And power up our emergency broadcast systems. If anyone's awake out there, they need to know help has arrived." As the message was sent, the crew of the Pathfinder realized they were no longer just explorers or defenders. They had become potential rescuers, facing what might be the largest humanitarian mission in human history. The real question was, could they help these strange visitors, or would they be forced to watch as millions of lives faded away in the cold darkness of space? Behind them, Earth waited for news, unaware that this discovery would change humanity's place in the galaxy forever. Lieutenant Anna Miller had trained for first contact scenarios hundreds of times, but nothing had prepared her for this. She sat at her communications station on the Pathfinder, trying every frequency and protocol she knew. The giant alien fleet floated silently before them, its elegant ships reflecting the distant sunlight. "Trying emergency band 7 now," she announced to Captain Richards, who stood behind her chair, watching intently. The bridge crew held their breath as she sent another signal. This time, something responded. A soft blue light pulsed across the nearest alien ship's hull. Then suddenly, a holographic display appeared in the middle of the Pathfinder's bridge. It showed complex symbols floating in the air, constantly changing and shifting. "It's their emergency AI system," Miller said, her eyes moving quickly across her screens. "Basic universal mathematics. It's trying to establish a common language." The next 30 minutes were intense as the ship's computers worked with the alien AI, building a simple way to communicate. The alien AI was clever. It had been programmed to wake up if help arrived, using minimal power to establish contact. Finally, words in rough English appeared in the hologram. "Help. Power critical. 3 million lives." Captain Richards stepped forward. "This is Captain Tom Richards of the Earth Defense Fleet. We're here to help. Can you tell us what happened?" The AI's response came slowly, saving energy with each word. "We are MERIANS. Home star dying. Evacuation fleet. Navigation error. Power systems failed." The story became clear as they exchanged more messages. The Meridians were a peaceful species who had been forced to flee their home system when their star began to die unexpectedly. They had launched this massive evacuation fleet, carrying millions of their people in stasis pods, heading for a colony they'd prepared in another system. But something had gone wrong. A massive solar flare from their dying sun had damaged their navigation systems, sending them off course. They'd ended up using too much power trying to correct their path, and now their ships were running on emergency reserves only. "How much time do we have?" Richards asked. The response was chilling. 72 hours until life support fails. The bridge fell silent. 3 million lives. 72 hours. "Show us your power systems," Richards commanded. "We need to understand what we're working with." The hologram changed, displaying complex technical diagrams. The Pathfinder's engineering team studied them carefully, but their faces grew increasingly worried. Chief Engineer Mike Brown shook his head. "Captain, their technology. It's advanced, but it's completely different from ours. Their power systems operate on principles we've never seen before." "Can we give them power from our engines?" Richards asked. "No, sir," Brown replied. "It would be like trying to power a quantum computer with a potato battery. The systems aren't just different. They're from completely different branches of science." Lieutenant Miller continued communicating with the AI, learning more about the Meridians. They were a species that had achieved peace thousands of years ago, focusing all their efforts on science and exploration. Now, their entire civilization's survivors were trapped here, dying slowly in the cold of space. "What about their backup systems?" Richards asked. "Used," the AI responded. "All backup power consumed. Main systems dormant. Can not WAKMERIDIANS. Fuel power restoration." Captain Richards looked out at the massive fleet. Each ship carried thousands of sleeping Meridians, all of them counting on their emergency systems to keep them alive until help arrived. They had found that help, but now the real challenge began, figuring out how to save them. "Send everything we've learned back to Earth," Richards ordered, "and inform them we're declaring this a Class 1 emergency. We need every expert they can find, and we need them now." As the message was sent, the crew of the Pathfinder looked at the sleeping fleet. Humanity had just been handed its greatest test: save an entire civilization in 3 days, using technology they barely understood. The clock was ticking. Jack Wilson was Earth's best power systems engineer, and right now, he was staring at the most challenging problem of his career. The holographic displays in the Pathfinder's main engineering bay showed the alien fleet's power systems from every angle, but they might as well have been showing magic. "Conventional solutions won't work," he said, running his hand through his gray hair. "Their power systems don't just store energy. They convert it into something else entirely." The engineering bay had become a crowded place. Earth had sent their top minds through emergency transport ships, and now 20 of humanity's brightest engineers worked alongside the Pathfinder's crew. Time was running out. They had already used up 12 hours just getting everyone here. "What about linking multiple Earth ships together?" someone suggested. "Pool our power." Jack shook his head. "We'd need 1,000 ships, and we've only got 60 in range. Plus, the power types don't match. We'd just fry their systems." The alien eye watched their discussions through the ship's cameras, occasionally adding information in its energy-saving, brief manner. "Power needs massive. Standard rescue proto save horas. Insufficient." Captain Richard stood at the back of the room, watching his team work. "We got 60 hours left," he reminded them. "We need solutions, not problems." As if to emphasize his words, the hologram showed another ship in the alien fleet losing emergency power to one of its sections. The AI reported, "Section 12, Ship 47. Failed. 10,000 lives at risk." The engineers worked faster. Jack stepped back from the main display, his eyes moving between different screens. He was looking at Earth's orbital defense network, then at the alien fleet, then back again. Slowly, an idea began to form. "We're thinking too small," he said suddenly. Everyone turned to look at him. "We keep trying to power their ships directly. But what if we could give them the energy they need to power themselves?" He walked to the main display, zooming out to show both Earth and the alien fleet. Earth's orbital solar array network. It's not just for defense. It's the biggest power collection system humans have ever built. The room grew quiet as people began to understand what he was suggesting. "You want to use the entire orbital defense network as a power transmitter?" Captain Richards asked, stepping forward. "Not just the defense network," Jack replied, his eyes bright with the excitement of a possible solution. "Every solar array in Earth's orbit, the defense platforms, the power stations, the civilian collectors, everything." He quickly drew up some calculations on a side screen. "If we can redirect all of those arrays, focus their collected solar energy into a tight beam, we might be able to give the Meridians enough raw energy for their systems to process it their way." The alien eye's response was immediate. "POSSIBILITY. Exists. Conversion systems. Still FUNCTIONL. Require massive energy input." "But the orbital network is Earth's main power source," someone protested. "We'd be shutting down half the planet's power grid." "Better than watching 3 million people die," Captain Richards replied firmly. He turned to Jack. "What do you need?" "Permission from every government that controls part of the network. Engineers to rewrite the targeting systems. They were never designed to focus like this. And we need to figure out how to prevent the beam from destroying the first ship it hits." The captain nodded and opened a channel to Earth Command. As he explained the plan, Jack kept working on the calculations. They would need to be perfect. Too little power, and it wouldn't help. Too much, and they could vaporize the entire fleet. "One more thing," Jack added, looking up from his work. "We need to convince Earth's governments to do all this in the next 2 hours. Because after that, we won't have enough time to implement the solution before life support fails." Captain Richards looked at the sleeping fleet through the viewing window. Somewhere in those ships were 3 million people who would never know how close they came to dying, or how many humans worked to save them. Unless, of course, They failed. The United Earth Council chamber had never been so full. On massive screens around the room, government leaders from every nation argued about the proposed rescue plan. The chamber's digital displays showed a constant countdown, 58 hours until life support failure. This is madness. The European Union representative's voice boomed through the speakers. You're asking us to shut down our orbital defense systems. What if this is a trap? Jack Wilson stood at the center of the chamber, surrounded by displays showing the alien fleet. His voice was tired but determined. Every minute we wait, another ship's systems move closer to failure. We've confirmed these aliens are real, and they're dying. The Chinese representative leaned forward. And if we turn off our defenses, what stops them from attacking once they have power? Captain Richards, speaking from the Pathfinder through a video link, answered that one. Their weapons systems are completely offline. Even with our power, it would take them weeks to restart those systems. This is about saving lives, not fighting wars. The debate raged on. Meanwhile, in orbit, engineers were already preparing for the possibility of approval. They worked in spacesuits, manually adjusting huge solar arrays, even as politicians argued about letting them do it. On the Pathfinder, the alien eyes messages were becoming shorter, saving every bit of power. Ship 89. Failing. Ship 142. Failing. Jack looked at the faces on the screens around him. Every nation has backup power systems. Yes, there will be rolling blackouts. Yes, it will cost money. But we're talking about 3 million lives. The Indian representative spoke up. The cost of redirecting our arrays, the power losses to our cities. Who pays for this? All of you do, Jack replied simply. Because next time, it might be Earth needing help. The room fell silent. On one of the screens, an engineer in a spacesuit worked on a massive solar array, racing against time. The array was bigger than a football field, designed to power entire cities. Now they needed hundreds of them. Finally, the UN Secretary-General stood up. We will vote now. The fate of millions rests on this decision. The votes came in one by one. Yes, yes, no, yes. Each vote represented billions of dollars in resources, massive power transfers, and the cooperation of entire nations. As the final votes were tallied, Jack was already running toward the emergency shuttle. They had approval, but now the real race began. Back on the Pathfinder, the engineering team sprang into action. The first attempt to redirect power from Earth's orbital arrays had to be perfect. They couldn't risk a second try. Power levels at 40% and rising, called out one engineer, watching as solar arrays across Earth's orbit slowly turned toward their target. The alien AI warned, power surge, dangerous, must be precise. The first attempt failed catastrophically. The power beam missed its target by mere meters, nearly overloading the Pathfinder's own systems. Jack slammed his fist on the console in frustration. Recalculate, he shouted. We need to account for solar wind interference, and someone get me the status of the backup arrays. Around Earth, cities began experiencing their first blackouts as power was diverted to the rescue effort. In orbit, hundreds of engineers in spacesuits continued their dangerous work, adjusting massive arrays by hand when the automated systems weren't precise enough. Time kept ticking away. The displays now showed 36 hours remaining, and they had already lost 3 hours to the failed attempt. In the alien fleet, more emergency systems were failing every minute. Captain Richards watched another section of ships go dark. They were running out of time, and their one solution wasn't working. They needed something else, something they hadn't thought of yet. He looked at his crew, then at the sleeping fleet. Sometimes, he knew, the most obvious solutions were the hardest to see. Whatever they were missing, they needed to find it fast. The fate of 3 million lives depended on it. The news spread across Earth like wildfire. Millions of aliens were dying on our doorstep, and humanity's first attempt to save them had failed. But instead of panic, something unexpected happened. People began to help. "Captain, you need to see this," Lieutenant Miller called out on the Pathfinder's bridge. She pulled up video feeds from around the world on the main screen. In Seoul, an entire power plant's workers volunteered for double shifts to manage the emergency power transfers. In Lagos, engineers were modifying solar farms to add their power to the rescue effort. Across Russia, civilians were accepting scheduled blackouts without complaint, knowing their power was being used to save lives. "Sir," the communications officer interrupted, "we're getting calls from everyone." Private space companies were offering their ships as power relay stations. Research stations were volunteering their power banks. Even remote outposts were asking how they could help. The alien eye observed this activity, its messages showing rare emotion. Unin expct global cooperation. Jack Wilson, still working on fixing the failed power transfer system, looked up at the new data flowing in. This changes everything," he said, his tired eyes suddenly bright. "With this many power sources, we could create a network of smaller beams instead of one big one." Captain Richard studied the growing list of volunteers. "How many ships do we need?" "All of them," Jack replied. "Every ship that can carry a power relay. We'll form a chain from Earth to the alien fleet." The response was overwhelming. Within hours, over 500 civilian ships launched from various spaceports. Meanwhile, space stations began shutting down non-essential systems to serve as emergency power banks. On Earth, engineers worked together across borders and languages. Chinese solar farms linked with American power grids. European space stations coordinated with African ground control. Old rivalries were forgotten in the face of a greater purpose. The alien eye watched all this, counting down the hours. Time remaining: 24 hours. In orbit, civilian ships formed a massive chain, carefully positioning themselves between Earth and the alien fleet. Each ship would receive power from the one behind it and pass it forward, like a giant game of power relay. "It's not just about raw power anymore," Jack explained to the captain. "It's about controlled transfer. Each ship in the chain can help regulate the flow." The space around Earth had never been so crowded. Hundreds of ships held their positions with careful precision. Space station crews worked tirelessly to maintain the power banks. Every available engineer worked on the power relay systems. An alert sounded on the main console. Another alien ship was losing power. But this time, something different happened. A civilian mining ship broke formation and moved to provide emergency power to the failing section. "They didn't even wait for orders," Miller said, watching the mining ship's crew work. "That's humanity for you," Richards replied with a small smile. "Sometimes we're at our best when things are at their worst." The alien eye's message flashed on the screen. "OBC Orvation, humans, unite in Turisis." Jack looked at the complex network of ships, stations, and power relays they had built in less than a day. It wasn't pretty. It wasn't perfect. Some of the connections were held together with emergency patches and quick fixes, but it was very, very human. "Ready for second attempt at power transfer," he announced. "This time, we're not doing it alone." Around Earth, people gathered around screens to watch. In cities experiencing blackouts, they sat in darkness, hoping their sacrifice would help. In every spaceship and station, crews monitored their systems, ready to play their part. The alien fleet floated ahead of them, still dark, still silent. But now they were surrounded by hundreds of human ships, all working together to bring light back to that darkness. Captain Richards looked at his crew, then at the massive effort humanity had mounted in just a few hours. They had done the impossible, united the entire human race for a single purpose. Now they just had to make it work. The Pathfinder's main engineering room was silent except for the soft beeping of computers. Jack Wilson stared at the latest power calculations, shaking his head. Even with hundreds of ships helping, something was still missing. "The power keeps dispersing before it reaches the fleet," he muttered. "We're losing too much energy in transit." That's when Dave, A young mining engineer who had volunteered his ship for the rescue spoke up. "What about the moon?" Everyone turned to look at him. He pointed to the display showing their power relay network. "Look where the moon is right now, right between us and the alien fleet." Jack's eyes widened. He quickly pulled up a new simulation, his fingers flying over the controls. "Of course," he whispered. "We've been trying to avoid large gravity wells, but what if we use them instead?" The alien eye, which had been quietly observing, responded. "Gravity, HFYs, energy UAVs." The moon's mass could act as a natural amplifier, Jack explained, getting excited. "If we timed this right, we could use its gravitational field to focus our power beam instead of fighting against it." Captain Richards leaned over the display. "How long until the moon is in the perfect position?" 3 hours, one of the astronomers replied. "But we'll only have a 2-minute window when everything aligns perfectly." The alien AI added urgently, "Time remaining, 15 HOURs. Multiple systems. Critical." Jack looked at the complex web of ships and stations they had positioned. "We need to reposition everything. Every ship, every relay station, they all need to be aligned with the moon's gravity well." The captain nodded and opened a channel to all ships. "This is Captain Richards. We have one shot at this. Everyone needs to be in exact position when the moon aligns." Across space, hundreds of ships began moving into new positions. The coordination was incredible. Civilian mining ships maneuvered alongside military vessels, space station crews adjusted their power banks, and ground control teams recalculated power trajectories. Then Dave spoke up again. "What about the old mining tunnels?" "What mining tunnels?" Jack asked. "In the moon. There's a whole network of abandoned mining operations on the far side. They're lined with energy-conducting minerals we use to mine. We could use them as power conduits." The room burst into activity. The alien AI confirmed. "Mineral tunnels. Viable conductors." Within minutes, they had a new plan. They would channel the power through specific moon tunnels, using them like giant wire conduits. The minerals in the tunnel walls would help focus and amplify the energy. "This is insane," someone muttered. "We're going to use the moon as a giant power plug." "Sometimes insane is all we've got," Jack replied, already working on the new calculations. For the next 2 hours, every ship adjusted its position with precise coordination. Ground crews reactivated old lunar mining equipment. Engineers reprogrammed the power relay systems to account for the moon's mineral composition. The alien AI warned, "Power surge must be exact. ERO till LERNCs. Minimal." Finally, everything was ready. The ships were in position. The moon's tunnels were prepared. Earth's power grid was ready to give everything it had. Captain Richards looked at the countdown timer. 15 minutes until the moon would be perfectly aligned. "Status report," he called out. "Power grid at maximum capacity," came one response. "All ships in position," came another. "Lunar tunnels activated. Emergency systems standing by." Jack took a deep breath, looking at his final calculations one last time. They had one chance to get this right. If they failed, if anything went wrong, they wouldn't have time for another attempt. The alien fleet floated silently ahead of them, their emergency power almost depleted. 3 million lives hanging in the balance. 2 minutes to alignment, the computer announced. Captain Richards looked at his crew, then at the massive human fleet surrounding them, then at the sleeping alien ships they were trying to save. "Let's make history," he said quietly. "Alignment in 30 seconds, the computer announced. The combined fleet of human ships hung motionless in space. On Earth, entire cities went dark as power was diverted to the rescue effort. The moon loomed large before them, its ancient mining tunnels ready to channel the largest power surge in human history. 20 seconds. Jack Wilson's fingers hovered over the controls. Captain Richards stood beside him, watching the final countdown. In the alien fleet, emergency lights were failing one by one. Power grid at maximum capacity, someone called out. All stations ready. The alien eyes message flashed. Ready to receive. 10 seconds. Around Earth, people held their breath. In space, hundreds of ship crews watched their instruments. Every calculation, every position, every detail had to be perfect. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Now, Jack called out. The space around Earth lit up as every power station, every solar array, and every ship fired their energy beams simultaneously. The combined power of humanity's civilization streamed toward the moon in a massive wave of light. The lunar surface glowed as the energy hit the mining tunnels. Ancient minerals, dormant for decades, sparked to life. The moon's gravity caught the power beam, focused it, amplified it. Energy wave is stable, an engineer reported. Lunar tunnels are holding. The concentrated beam erupted from the moon's far side, carrying humanity's power toward the alien fleet. It struck the lid ship perfectly on target. For a moment, nothing happened. Then, slowly, lights began to appear on the alien vessel. The AI's message was immediate. Power receiving. CCCESSFUO. Converting. Beginning. One by one, sections of the massive alien ships began to glow. Their own power systems, dormant for so long, started to reactivate. The energy from Earth, focused and amplified by the moon, was giving them exactly what they needed. It's working, Jack whispered, watching the power levels rise. They're converting it successfully. Throughout the alien fleet, emergency systems switched off as main power returned. Stasis pods began their warming cycles. Life support systems resumed full operation. The AI reported, main systems, online, beginning, revival CQENC. Captain Richards watched as the alien ships came to life. Their elegant hulls now glowed with their own power, their systems humming with energy. How many did we lose? He asked quietly. Lieutenant Miller checked the readings. None, sir. We got to them all in time. A new message appeared from the AI. Agowaki inning. Meridian leadership. Everyone on the bridge held their breath. This was the moment they would meet the people they had worked so hard to save. The holographic display flickered, and for the first time, they saw a meridian. The alien was tall and elegant, with silvery skin and eyes that seemed to hold galaxies. When it spoke, the AI translated. We live. The meridian's voice carried deep emotion. Our sensors show what you have done. You united your entire world to save us, a species you had never met. Captain Richards stepped forward. We couldn't just let you die. In our long history, the Meridian continued, we have never seen such cooperation, such determination to preserve life. You shut down your defenses, risked your own power systems, all to help strangers. More Meridians were awakening now. Their ships were fully powered, their people beginning to emerge from stasis. 3 million lives saved by humanity's unified effort. We offer you not just our thanks, the Meridian leader said, but our friendship, our knowledge, our technology. You have proven yourselves to be not just clever, but wise, not just capable, but compassionate. Around Earth, cities began to light up again as power was restored. The hundreds of ships that had helped with the rescue began to pull back, their crews tired but proud. Jack looked at the massive alien fleet, now glowing with its own power. Welcome to our solar system, he said simply. The Meridian leader's response was translated by the AI one final time. No, welcome to the galaxy, humanity. You have earned your place among the stars. Earth had just made its first allies in space, and they had done it not through war or trade or diplomacy, but through the simple choice to help those in need. It was humanity's finest hour.